Hey, everybody. Philip Aldifer here at the Weather Report podcast. I'm with my amazing co-host, Jason Flynn. Jason, how are you?
Good.
Good.
It's not
Uh,
sunny anymore, but I'm still okay.
well, that's all right. Not every day is a sunny day, but it's going to be a
Sorry,
sunny
hold on.
day. Yeah,
There's big windows right here. You could see the people walking by in the reflection, and I
yeah.
waved at you, and a lady thought I was waving at her. Hilarious. A little behind the
working,
scenes action there.
working in a fishbowl. And so today we're going to talk a lot about the past of today's theme is lead generation. Talk about where lead gen has been, where lead gen and lead gen systems are right now, what the future of lead gen looks like, and there is no better person to join us for this conversation than Riley VanderKaay. Riley, good morning. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Very excited to be here and chat with you guys. I'm looking forward to it.
This is going to be great. Okay, but first of all, you got to explain the shirt. So we had this conversation off camera. Tell everybody about the shirt. What's
Yeah,
going on with this?
I was gonna say when I got on before we hit record, I'm like, all right, is this okay if I bring my shirt? So we do Fun Shirt Fridays at the office and with the Market Center. We do Fun Shirt Friday with our group of people and our group of companies, and I'm unfortunately the only one that actually ends up doing it. But I have to stick to my word. So this is one of my many. I'm in my free time outside of the professional world. I'm a big like 70s bowling shirt kind of guy. So if you can find me like a thrift store with old school bowling shirts or like a cool website with bowling shirts, there I'm going to be their number one customer. So if you catch me anywhere outside of working hours, I'm probably wearing something like this. So
So if you're watching this recording later or you're listening, comment below for the best bowling shirt, vintage bowling shirt shop in your town. We'll
there you go.
tag Riley in it. We'll make sure we get everybody connected. There we go.
I
Good
don't
stuff.
I don't know much about Ohio, but I feel like that is something people in Ohio would do. So I like it.
There's really nothing else going on here, so we got to bring it
We
ourselves. You
just
know what I
bowl.
mean? Like,
We're
yeah,
very,
we
very, very focused around bowling
I'm gonna bring
culture.
my
I would
style.
not be surprised.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went to school in Ohio for 2 years. I attended college in Ohio for 2 years in a little town that still had the original. And I swear this is true. It was a big sign that said "Dip, Sip, Disco N" with an N. Dip, Sip, Disco N Bowl, and it was a four-lane bowling alley. It was an old concrete swimming pool that had been long closed because it was about the size of a tennis court with like a 20-foot high dive. I am sure someone did not make the pool and that's why they closed it down. It had like a roller rink disco and it was the only place where you could actually carry beer onto the lanes. And so that was the game. Like how what sort of game could you roll holding a beer the entire
Well,
time? So
holding a
there we
beer,
go. Yeah,
especially what number beer it was, right?
that's right. That's right.
We were
Dip
going
sip
to talk about lead gen, but now we're talking about what to do in Ohio in the 80s.
in
Yeah.
the 80s. That's right. That's right. Welcome to the 80s podcast. I'm your host. No, no, not at all. This is about lead gen and the future of lead gen, where we are with lead gen, where lead gen is going. So this is technology, marketing, real estate, all combined. But I'm going to just begin maybe with before we dive into that, Riley, I'm curious, how did you get into this industry? Why real estate? I mean, because you could take your tech skills and apply them anywhere.
Yeah.
Why real estate for you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird storyline. So I always start by the funny part of the story, which is I used to bartend in college, and I bartended at bars that nobody went to, and so I had to solve that problem so I would make money. And so my entrance into the industry was I was a bartender in college, and I started realizing I need to get more people into this bar so I can make some money. And so I started doing some advertising and marketing with the places that I worked, and kind of
Okay.
started jumping around to different bars through college. It's kind of how I made my way through school. And then after college, so I graduated in May of 2020, and so that's right when COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, it was kind of like, why don't I just start my own company now, anyways? Because everything's kind of up in the air. So let's just keep this ball rolling that I'm already doing. So partnered up with my partner Kyle, who's kind of the brains behind our operation, and he and I just went off and started the agency, and we worked with a lot of local small businesses. So it started in the bars and restaurants because that's who I already knew, and then it got into insurance agents and CPA firms and flower shops, and I mean kind of all different types of clientele. And we were lucky enough to get referred to a real estate agent, and that real
Got
estate
it.
agent in the first year that we worked with her made a substantial amount of money off of what we did in a market where average price points 220, 250, right? And so when she made a good amount of money, it was upwards of about six figures in profit after the 12-month period we worked originally. We were thought, okay, we have something here, right? And we didn't really even think about it until the agent came to us and she was like, do you guys want more real estate clients? Because I've got a lot of people I could connect you with. And so we had kind of been referral based leading up to that. And we decided that was about a year in to starting the agency. And so we decided, let's really dive into this real estate side of things and see what we find. And at first it was just, it works and we have a model that works. So let's see if it works for other people across different parts of the US. As that started to happen, we got deeper into the industry, and I just fell in love with it within a handful of months. I mean, I think I'm definitely I'm definitely part of this industry in a deep way with not only what's happening in the future, but more for me. I just have a deep love for the real estate industry and the job of being a real estate agent within it. And so I like the idea of kind of building systems and tools and technology for the future to support agents and
Yeah.
teams as they grow. So
Yeah.
that's how we got here.
And that became the Speculo group. So that was the origin story. Yeah.
Yes, that is the origin story of the Speculo group. And the best part is they used to be named a different company's name, and we weren't smart enough to think, well, I wonder if there's other companies that do the same thing we do that are named this name that are going to send us a cease and desist letter. And sure enough, that happened. And we said, well, we need
There
to
are.
change the name. So yeah, so it was Mirror Media in the beginning. So fun story of the name is we just looked for the word mirror in different languages, and Speculo is just the word mirror in Latin. So that's why I got named
There we go.
because that's two guys that not super creative on the naming side, but got to it. So
I mean,
There
if
we
you
go.
look at they are now Jasper. They were Jarvis for AI, Jasper, Jarvis, and before that they were something else. I forget what
Yeah.
they were before.
yeah,
But then they went to Jarvis, and who would have thought you might get sued by Disney and
Who'd have thunk it?
Marvel?
yeah,
Right. And
Yeah.
so then they quickly pivoted again. They're like, now we're Jasper.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, there we go. Now they're set.
Yep,
That's all right.
that's the
The-
naming. Naming's an interesting thing, but I feel like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day at one point, right? So
Exactly. Reach into a bag of Scrabble
They're
letters. All right.
at some point
So
they just go, it's Riley's company.
yeah,
it's right.
exactly.
Oh, okay. Got it.
It's just Riley. You know
Yeah,
Riley. It's like it's Elon's company. We know who
yeah.
we're talking about. All right. So when you started off, what for those who aren't familiar with Speculo or what you do, or even really what we're talking about here is a system and a service that generates leads online that delivers them to a service company, florist, realtor, insurance agent,
Mhm,
whatever. I
mhm.
mean, does that basically capture
Yeah,
it?
I mean the at the end of the day, like the our biggest viewpoint, our mission from the beginning has just been making it easier for the user of our products and services to connect with their users, right?
Yeah,
So like if you can, and that's the idea behind the name is mirror, right? So
yeah,
mirroring means everything about advertising and marketing and lead generation, especially with technology as a whole, with the way the market and the way the industry of technology is headed, the use case of technology. In fact, Jason, I got to give you a shout out. I'm going to steal what you said earlier, which is like the use case is the person who's growing is the one who's using it correctly. It's not going to replace us. It's going to be who utilizes it the best. Right. And like I said, I got to give you the shout out, Jason, because I stole that from you. But
I,
that's the
I stole it from Gary Keller. So, and
okay,
he
perfect.
stole
All
it
right.
from
So we're all
someone
just
else. So we're
we're
good.
all just stealing it. We're all just stealing different things. So, but yeah, and that's always been the vision of Speculo. So it's broken down to its simplest sense. It's three pillars. It's finding leads out there in the world that need somebody who provides a real estate related service for buying, selling, investing, connecting them with our agents in the easiest, frictionless way, and then allowing our agents resources and leverage through our company to deliver the service of closing transactions in a positive way with those users and with those clients, right? So we kind of cover, I'm all about the number three. Everything should be able to fit in three, right? And those are our kind of baseline three pillars to make sure that the client succeeds with the technology and services that we provide them. It's just making their life and their process have less friction in it.
less friction. Yeah. So at the beginning we said we're going to talk about sort of the past, present, and the future of lead gen. When you were starting, what was talk us through maybe what the common path was, or what were you doing
Mm.
when you first launched? What
Yeah.
was the
No, I love that question. When we first launched, I think there's a positive side and a negative side, right? So like when we first launched, the positive side is that we were, and to this day we still are, but back in the beginning, it was a lot of figuring out how to stitch together different tools. That was the beginning thing that we were really good at, right? Was
okay?
taking different tools and systems and making them talk to each other, right? What the negative side of the early days of our business that we found solutions to was that was great. And we were all about our part of the equation, right? Our 50% of the equation. But it was really kind of one of those like, okay, we got the lead in the best possible way with all the greatest, most cutting edge tools using the best data and best technology. But then when we gave them to a client, it was like, let's do it, right? Let's go. I mean, thumbs up, best of luck. And we started learning very early on that that's not, it can't just be that kind of pass off, right? We need to also build a company and build a model that focuses on the second half of that conversion, right? To help them make that experience frictionless when we give them that opportunity. So that was kind of how it was in the beginning. So over the last 3 to 4 years, again, using different tools and technology and products, as well as just service and leverage through human beings in the agency, that's really where we've evolved, is focusing more
Okay.
deeply on that second part of the conversion, which is the agent taking the opportunity we provide them and converting them into real ROI and real business. I think that's the biggest part of online lead generation that kind of people don't necessarily want to attack, right? Is like that piece of modernizing the service provider, not just the service that's being provided. Does that make sense in kind of the way I'm saying it, right? It's getting us to understand there's a second part of the conversion, and that's the support and leverage the agents need after we provide the opportunity.
After you
I would
put the yeah.
almost, to like rephrase that in a way, it's or the way I'm hearing it is taking essentially taking that piece off of them so then they can focus on the one thing that actually matters, which is go get in front of the client that or the lead that we helped you generate. Right?
Exactly.
Because we hear from agents all the time that are like, I don't know where to start. Right? I literally was in a class the other day and a top agent was like, I just need someone to tell me what to do in this one area that she was talking about. It's like,
Yes.
okay, then let's go do that thing. Or if somebody else did that thing for you, then all you have to do is then follow up with the leads that come in through it. Great. So it's
Yep.
just a huge piece of leverage of saying you're the expert in whether it's Google, Instagram, whatever path, doesn't matter. You're the expert in that channel. Go take over that for me. And then I get to just go do the one piece I'm really good at as a real estate agent. It's getting them into
Yep.
being a client, into contract, into closing.
Well, and that's a big thing. Like I love the way we're saying it, because that's whenever you use the word evolution and you tie it to lead gen or technology, what's everybody thinking about, right? Tools and AI and predictive analytics and all of those big cool things, right? But again, back to the point of that, Gary made and now we're making here in this conversation, is like it's really the user of the tool. And 99% of the time when we modernize technology, it actually, in a weird kind of way, it causes the users of that technology to not necessarily have to dive into a whole laundry list of activities to get a job done. Now you can focus on your one thing. But if the rest of the laundry list isn't covered by the right user of the tool, none of it matters, right? Then what do we end up doing? We end up going backwards and wasting money, time, energy, and just mind share on something that we didn't really know how to use from the beginning. So I think the evolution that we are going to talk about today, a big focus on that evolution for us in what we're doing, and also forcing others in our industry to do, is we have to evolve as service providers and take over more responsibility for the service that we actually provide, right? And really start to evolve our process and our leverage that we provide to our clients using our tools and systems, right? So that's kind of the way we see it as part of that evolution.
So what does that look like?
Getting
I mean,
closer to
that's yeah.
getting closer to the tool, right? Like I would say it's when we, like I said, again, with our process, it's, if we, let's say I just pop up with a predictive analytics tool, right? Let's say I just decide I want to create one of those today. I can take that predictive analytics tool and I can put a price on it, and I can tell clients, hey, use this tool to figure out which of your sellers in your database are closer to sell their home in the next 90 days, right? Based off of all the different metrics I put into a predictive analytics tool. But what a lot of people won't talk about with predictive analytics is that you have to have good data to put in to get good data out. And then you also need to
Yeah.
know how to analyze that data. And then you need to know how to prioritize that data. Imagine if instead of just giving someone the tool and saying, go use it, we also give them an account strategist, or we give them an interpreter of that data to help them understand how to put it together, how to use the tool itself, and then how to interpret the data that tool gives you. So that's 50% of that evolution I'm talking about, is service providers putting more leverage in the hands of the users of their tools.
In the hands of the user. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. So when we're because we've used the word tool and lead source, um, in simple terms, we're talking about what? Google Ads,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, Facebook, all of it? What's when you think about generating leads online that you will help your clients, the realtors,
Yeah.
convert into business, where are they coming from?
Yeah. I think different tools and different strategies. So we've all heard the word funnel, right? We all look at the word funnel and we all understand what the word funnel means. I think as technology advances and lead gen advances and evolves, we have to start also taking the platforms and the strategies themselves and putting them in their own funnel, a bigger funnel, so to speak, right? So, for
Okay.
example, when we talk about social media, right? When we talk about what we're doing on social media or supporting agents with building their brand on social media, right? That is going to be an evolution of its strategy where it's really going to start top of funnel, right? If you enter into that conversation, you enter into that, into social media with the mission of getting leads from it. Yeah, I mean, that's what we want at the end of the day, but we also have to understand that it's going to start at the top of the funnel, which is giving value first and giving knowledge first to our viewers. So it might not turn into immediate leads or immediate listings, but what it will turn into is mind share within your market, right? And connecting with people in your market. So that's going to live at the top of the funnel. So that's, social media across Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, things like that. Right.
Hmm.
And then we're also talking about running actual advertising campaigns, lead gen campaigns, paid campaigns on those different platforms. So a Facebook campaign is going to live in the middle of the funnel, right? That's kind of under the umbrella we're talking about. A Google Ads campaign is going to be a little deeper in the funnel, right? It's a different level of intent. So it's really across every single channel is what we're talking about here, right? The evolution of these different channels, but we also have to be very mindful of there's an organic side of the channel and there's a paid side of the channel. And those are in very different parts of the funnel. And they also have very different strategies. So we spend a lot of time coaching our clients to that.
Got it. So early day of lead gen, I get an account, I run some ads without much without much strategy
Hmm.
or forethought. Is that what we're, I mean, that like phase one
Yeah.
of this for a lot of, and for a lot of realtors too. I mean, for like we hear the ads, we see the articles, run ads, buy this, click this, press
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first stage of the evolution is putting together a campaign, right? And putting
Yep.
together a lot of different pieces of those campaigns. But there's right now one of the things that we're talking about a lot on social media, kind of a nugget of potential value slash knowledge to share here is like let the organic do the work for what you want your paid to achieve. So like if you're on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or something like that, a lot of times we used to test by running 4 different ads in one campaign to see which one performs the best. But now with organic reach being so strong, just use an organic post to go tell you, hey, out of these 4 videos, this one was interacted with the most by likes, comments, and shares and engagement from my viewership. So I'm just going to take that video, put a call to action at the end of it, and run an ad behind it, right? So like that's also part of the evolution of your content is like saving, putting time and money in the right siphons at the right point in time. Use organic
Yep.
content to tell you what your paid content should be.
What it should be. Yeah. Yeah. So if you were okay, so let's imagine someone is just starting now to look at online lead gen. They're considering that, that whatever. They got their license, they've done some deals, they're ready to go. What if you were to coach me through this as a first step? What's the first thing I should do?
First thing you should do if you're a brand new agent looking to do anything in the online world for lead generation, I would say focus on building a well recognizable brand from logo down to just coherence across your social media channels. And I would say for the first 6 months to a year, the approach should be organic social content, right? Building a brand,
Okay.
getting your voice out there, getting yourself well known, and then, get a website. Those would be my first 3 pieces of advice. We're doing that right now in our market center with a lot of the new agents we're bringing in. Those are my
Yeah.
3 things, right? Get a
Yeah.
logo. We'll help you build a logo so you have a noticeable brand to call attention to, right? Start creating social media content, getting your voice out there in front of your market, letting them know who you are. And then number 3, get a website so people can find out more information about you on the internet.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Get known. Get
Get known.
create some online home
Yeah.
that you can drive people back to. Got it.
Yeah. I would actively tell people do not buy leads in those early stages, especially if you're a brand new agent. I would not necessarily advise to go buy leads. I just wouldn't, because you don't have a brand that somebody's going to be able to call back to, right? And you don't have necessarily a consistent vision that somebody can call back to and see you on social media or see you on a website or engage with you in another way, right? Paying for leads is, in my opinion, a supplemental thing to a well-established bedrock of a business, which is a brand.
A brand. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially in
And a
this.
database, and especially in this, yeah, database you can communicate with naturally, and a
Yeah,
brand you can drive them to.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, so then, so now let's move a little further down the experience ladder. So now I'm got a business running, got an established brand, have a database that's functioning, and I'm working today in 2024. What's the environment for me if I'm a realtor in that position?
Okay. Yeah. So I would say the environment in that position is, I would say, getting into like paid online lead gen, like getting into the next layer of paid would be a next really powerful step.
Okay.
First thing I would push a lot of agents' attention to is make sure your business is ready for online lead gen, because it's not like referral business. It's not database business, right? Like they need to be worked.
Mhm.
They need to be connected. Speed to lead actually matters, right? And there's a lot of things to it that are very important. So first step would be building a internal structure of leverage through tools and people to make sure that you can actually manage the lead gen coming in, right? But if I were going to tell somebody, I mean, and just straight numbers, I mean, if we want to dive right into like actual numbers, right? We kind of
Yeah.
coach people to like breaking points, right? Like on a Facebook campaign, you can spend, a few $100s. You can maybe spend 500, 1,000, something like that. With Google Ads, for example, we normally coach people to the starting budget on Google should be 1,500 to 2,000 a month. And if you don't have that to spend in your budget for a long period of time, use that money elsewhere, because you can get a lot more for it. Right. So it's more when
Okay.
you start to get into like this supplemental aspect of lead gen is where you really want to focus in on like Google Ads and really building real funnels inside and outside of your business to generate real income from online leads. But it also comes back to your budget, right? There's a certain level that you want to make sure that you're not trying to play in before you're ready to play in it, because you can waste a lot of money, right? And I'm sure everybody
Yeah.
who will listen to this podcast has
Yeah.
had that experience before, right?
Yeah.
Where it's
Yeah. Yeah.
spent a ton of money for 6 months and they're like, I didn't get anything out of that, right? But in reality, it's just maybe that wasn't the right partner at the right time, or your business wasn't ready for it at the right time. Like there's no necessarily bad lead gen strategy. It's just a bad effort or a bad process behind it.
That okay, so that goes to the idea that you were talking about earlier, that you might in your funnel in your funnel you might use different tools at different times depending on the maturity of the business itself, and where the clients are trying to target.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is budget so important? Why does that matter?
Yeah. Budget, to me, budget is important because the only thing that matters is ROI in this game, right?
Yeah.
Like we say that to people all the time. I'm like, listen, we can all be best friends. My client could be my absolute best friend and we can go out and have drinks and dinner and have fun on the weekends. But at the end of the day, if we're not making money together, then we're not going to last together, right? And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people don't talk about budget as what it should be in business planning, which is 12 months, 18 months, 24 months worth of spend in a certain process, because this stuff also doesn't happen fast, right? Like if you ever have somebody that sits down in front of you and tells you that this is going to happen quickly with online leads, then run for the hills in the other direction, right? And so
Yeah.
it's just not a fast thing. So we talk about budget a lot because you don't want to try to, put the cart before the horse with the certain platform or the certain goals that you set with your budget, just to be able to start trying and close early business and end up not getting to that point and not have any more budget to spend on growth, right? It's a long-term game, and your budget is also indicative of the platform you're playing in.
I want to slow down on that point. Help us understand if again, if you're new to the lead gen game, why is online lead gen, why does it have such a long tail? Why is that
Yeah.
the case? Yeah.
There's two reasons why online lead gen has a long delivery timeline. Number one is the not qualitative one, right? It's qualitative versus quantitative. The first reason is the qualitative one, which is really just these people don't know the agent that they're talking to, right? And they're coming in at different times, and they're different time frames or perspectives on what they actually need to do when they're ready to buy a home or sell a home, right? And so it's really more of a connection. It's more of working that lead through your pipeline. Now, have I seen some of our clients get a lead in on a Saturday afternoon and put them under contract Tuesday morning? Absolutely. I've seen that a handful of times, but does that happen majority of the time? Not even close. Right. And it's really just the perspective of the person that's becoming a lead, right? They might be going to the internet because they're just starting their search and they're searching homes for sale in New Albany, Ohio. Or they might be showing up because they just, decided they wanted to fire their current agent and go with a different agent. And so what do they search? Homes for sale in New Albany, Ohio, right? Deciding the difference between those two is really what I mean when I say the qualitative aspect of like, it's getting that it's understanding that you're going to get a large breadth of different pipeline leads when you're doing online lead gen. And that it comes into the second piece, which is the quantitative piece. The reason why we say it has that long tail is because you're going to get leads in multiple different aspects of your pipeline. And once you're able to spread that pipeline out, our goal is to get to the crash effect, right? Our goal with our clients is once we hit 5 to 6 months, we want to start seeing leads from months, 1, 2, and 3 start to writing offers and transacting and closing and checks hitting the bank. Because then when you hit that point, now you're having consistency, right? And consistency and predictability inside of online lead gen is what the real goal is, right? So we set that stage with the client to understand stuff doesn't happen quickly, but when it starts to fall, that's when it becomes a very trustworthy and very predictable pipeline and revenue generator for the business.
So
I
essentially,
think,
let's say I'm running a $500 a month budget for Google Ads, right? And if essentially I'm not able to get enough leads through that to then see the result in that, like, call it 4, 5, 6 month mark, right? And so then if I'm not seeing the result, then I'm more likely to bail out and say, okay, this isn't for me because I'm not seeing the result. But if I'm spending the 1,500 to 2,000 to get enough leads in order to get them converting in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, then I can keep that game rolling, right? Like I have when we talk red light, green light, I have the green light because I now have the revenue that I can put it back into this to keep it going. So that makes a lot more sense than when I hear people say, you just need more leads. It's like, yeah, it's always more leads, but that actually has a reason behind it.
Yeah. Well, it's also the brain too. Like I like to envision these platforms as brains, right? And when you start a new Google Ads campaign, that's a baby little brain, right? That thing doesn't know anything yet. It has no data. It has no knowledge. It has no information. So your budget is also a direct correlation to the speed, right? Like I've got, I've had clients that spend $20,000, $30,000 a month. I can tell you that they have closings a hell of a lot faster, right? Because they have more leads, but also their campaign learns faster because it has more data. So that's the other reason why I say your budget is also it tells you what platform to go to, because on Google is a very reactive type of advertising. We are waiting for somebody to present a question or a need, and then we are presenting ourselves as a solution. So that means that we're waiting for information to come to us, and then we gather that information by spending money and then putting ourselves in front of the opportunity. So you need more money spent faster to learn faster and improve results versus a Facebook type or a TikTok or Instagram, where it's very proactive advertising, where you are spending money to get in front of people, whether they show up in a questioning or need-based environment or not. You're just putting yourself in front of them based off the algorithm. So now you can spend less money to gather more data. So your budget is very much tied to the learning of the campaign and learning of the platforms, learning what do I want, right? What does Philip runs an advertising campaign for buyers in this specific city? The platform needs to learn what's the perfect buyer for Philip in this city and how much is he willing to spend on it. That takes time and money, right? And so that's where your budget's really tied to as well.
And even like going into like the Facebook world, like people don't realize Facebook's learning is 50 leads in a single campaign. Right? They have to see somebody register 50 times for ideal. Like, I will often run a 5-day campaign around a specific listing and just kind of try to get as many people as I can in that moment. And that's fine. But it's really the campaigns that are then running for that, 30 days where I can get 50 leads in. So then it says, okay, I'm out of my learning phase. And now I've gathered enough data to figure out of the other couple billion people we have on the platform, who else fits this profile.
Exactly.
Right? The other saying we often say is the quality is in the quantity. And you'll hear agents say like, oh no, which one's better? And I do want to ask you this question. You don't have to answer it right this second, but agents love to say, what's better, Facebook or Google, or Instagram, Google, YouTube, like whatever, A versus B. But really it comes down to which one are you getting the most leads out of, because then you can sift through and find that 1% a lot faster. 1% of 30 leads in a month is 0.3. That's not a closing. If you're going off the 1%, 1 or 3% rule, that's not enough. But if I bring in, you said the client with a $10,000-$20,000 budget, yeah, they're gonna have closings in there if they can follow up, because they have so many to choose from. Like you have your haystack is huge to find the needle in, or there's a lot more needles. That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, it's definitely an and, not an or, right? That's like one of my favorite things to say across pretty much any question I ever get is like, it's and, not or, right? So like, if you've got a big enough budget, I say diversify, right? So like, if you've got a big enough budget, let's run Facebook to grow the database and grow more long-term nurture, 12-month out, 12-month out closings. Let's use 5,000 of that $10,000 budget on Google to generate more 6 months or less type of closings that also bolster up that future closing, right? And so now that's, again, when you're building a really strong pipeline. The one thing I would say too is interesting with you giving your example of like 30 leads in a month or 60 leads in a month or whatever. That also very much so the quality is in the quantity is correct 99% of the time, but it also is very connected to how you're building campaigns, right? Like we have a thing that we always like to say where it's like, like when you're thinking about taking a lead and bidding on it. We use this example all the time with how we build Google ad campaigns specifically. I use like an art gallery example, right? It's kind of a funny, weird example, but it makes sense to me. So bear with me. Tell me if it doesn't make sense or not. But to me, it's like, imagine if you take a Van Gogh and you put it up on the stand and you got all the people in the crowd that are willing to bid and they start a big bidding war on it, right? Right. Somebody throws up and says, well, I'll spend $10,000 on that painting. Everybody around them that knows anything about the game is going to look at them and go, what the hell are you talking about? Right. Like that's a Van Gogh. It's way more expensive than that. And they're just kind of throwing something up and saying, well, I wonder if that works. Right. Then opposite scenario, right? You get a piece of art from a very unknown or starting out artist and you throw it up on the stage and somebody throws up and goes, I'll pay $2 million for that. Again, everyone's looking around like, what is this guy thinking? Like what, you know what I mean? Like, well, this doesn't make sense. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of times where when you get a low number of low quality leads, it's because of campaigns like that, right? Campaigns that are just kind of throwing things out there and seeing what sticks and trying to just go fishing in an open ocean and hope that they get something along the way, right? Now, you can get 30 leads in a month and find quality within those leads if you stock your metaphorical pond ahead of time with the leads that you want and you go target those people, which is when you get more targeted with your bidding, more exact about who it is that you want from the platform and the type of lead that you want to get. Now you get 30 leads in a month, you can spend less money and convert at a higher level because you're getting real opportunities, right? Not just names, phone numbers, and emails. So it's all about the philosophy around building a campaign as well, which kind of goes back to your answer of like quality versus quantity. It's an and conversation. If you want quality, you've also got to be willing to sift through it to find the quality, right? If you want just quality, you're going to have to get a lower number, which means you're going to have to either spend more money on the campaign or you're going to have to build a campaign that siphons out leads ahead of time.
So that goes to the process, and we've had this conversation before we started, but it goes to the process behind why you're doing what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. What is your process for lead generation? How much of that is different from person to person, or is there a standard that we should be following? Is that a fair question? Does that make sense?
No, it's a really great question. I think the only time it can't be standardized is when we're talking about the different like chess pieces on the board, right? Like it's there's multiple different models in lead gen. You can go directly to the agent, or you could do a jump ball, or you could do a different type of lead route, or you could hire a group of ISAs that siphon all the leads and then just book appointments for agents, right? You've also got the difference between a seller lead and a buyer lead. So I would say, again, it's kind of an and, not an or. Like what you're asking is a very valid question, and it goes by client to client, right? That's how we look at it, at least. Because you're also dealing with a different tech stack, right? Somebody might be using X CRM and X website, and they could be a tied duo CRM and website, or it could be a custom made, website tied to Command, right? That's a whole different process. That's a whole different lead route. And then you've also got to stitch that together with, do they have an ISA? Yes or no? That changes the workflow. If they don't have an ISA, who's their strongest agent? That's a buyer's agent versus a seller's agent, a listing agent. So you kind of have to customize it per client. I don't really think it's a one size fits all at any point, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you're thinking about, I mean, so if I'm listening to this, right? And again, if you've got questions or comments, throw them in the notes below, because we'd love to hear from you. But if I'm thinking about how to build my process as a realtor, I, to me, it sounds like my first question is, what's my budget right now?
Mm.
Like, what can I afford to do? How does that fit in with the way I want to do business? And then I go look for a technology solution that can facilitate that.
Yep.
Is that is that a
Yeah.
way to think through how to make some decisions on this front?
Yeah, 100%. And you've also got to figure out what you're willing to trade, right? Time versus money, right? In the early stages, you're trading a lot of time, right? To grow your
Yeah,
business versus in the future, you're going to be trading a lot of leverage, which is money, right?
totally.
So I think that's the early stage conversation. And also I look at this stuff in a very blunt way. And that's how we
Yep,
handle a lot of the new agents that join our brokerage and our market center hey, you're going to have to trade a lot of time before you can trade money. And my job is to coach them to where to spend their time versus where to use their money to gain leverage. And that's a really fine line. We've all seen the teams and the solo agents that hit that point where it's like you're ready to just blow through the roof, but you don't know exactly where to spend your time and your money, right? Because those are your only two
yep,
real leverage resources. And so that's really a lot of what we spend our time figuring out. But early stage agents, trade your time, get on social media, build a recognizable brand, because that's going to support everything you do in the future. If you do online lead gen, it's going to support it. If you do organic, it's going to support it. If you do
I'll
mailers,
support
it's
it.
going to support it, right? But
Yeah,
then as you get into, PPC lead gen and more online lead gen, that's where the next layer of conversation needs to be more about how are you leveraging your dollars correctly, whether it's an ISA salary or it's a higher volume of leads that your agents sift through like that. And that goes back to Jason, your point. Like that's the big question you have to ask is what is my current business model for online leads? If it's just that one agent working leads, go listing leads, right? Because you're going to get a lower number, higher quality. You can focus in on the listing, and that's where you can use your leverage. But if you've got 25 agents on your team and they're all looking for you for leads, go the Facebook route so you can get a higher volume and they can work through and find the quality, right? So that's kind of how I'm answering the question. Hopefully this is a good answer, right? It's
yeah.
you've got to look at your team infrastructure and what is going to make the most sense for that leverage around the team and the people you have, plus the technology that you're going to pay money
Plus
for.
the tech stack. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about where you think lead gen is going. I also want to make sure we have a conversation around how you choose tech stacks and how you make
Yeah.
some of those decisions. But where do you think lead gen just at in we've talked a lot about Google pay per click, Facebook, YouTube, again, different stages and different budgets. But where do you think online lead gen is going to be 2, 3, 5 years down the line?
Yeah. I think it's going to be, I think the keyword I would use is holistic. I would use a very like holistic keyword around answering that question, which is advertisers are, this is just something I personally noticed from our agency is like the I like to describe it as like a solar system, right? Like on the internet, you kind of have a solar system. You've got your website, which is your sun. That's where everything comes back to. Your brand, your website, that's your sun. The planets that are revolving around that sun are all the different channels and platforms. And we love, when we talk about online lead gen, it always, okay, Google, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all the fun and exciting stuff. But online lead gen is also newsletters, right? It's also email marketing. It's also all that other stuff we do through the internet, right? Using ChatGPT to write our newsletter, our blog for that week, right? All that cool techie stuff. And so the answer I would give on what the evolution is going to look like is holistic. And the reason for that is because we need to have all of those planets revolving the exact way we need with the exact frequency we need, hitting our clients in every aspect of their lives, because we're definitely seeing from a consumer perspective more awareness around what advertisements are, right? So when you
Okay.
look at something like TikTok right now, you're seeing a huge boom of those big Fortune 500 companies using influencer marketing. But you don't see that influencer hopping on a video and saying, "Hey guys, I'm representing this product. You should buy this because of these reasons." Instead, what it is them going out and doing an activity and just making sure that you can see their Stanley Cup, right? Or it's sitting behind them while they're talking, or a Celsius drink is in the corner of the podcast. And so it's now what's happening is we're consumers are more aware of the advertisement itself. So that means that as an agent, to really be successful, you've got to be everywhere and you've got to be present and you've got to be bringing value, which means you have to have a holistic perspective around your advertising. And I believe that's what the next 5 to 10 years is really going to look like. Having a lot
Yeah.
of advertisement, a lot of organic and paid advertisement across a lot of channels, and building a very holistic ecosystem / solar system around your brand, which on the internet is increasingly getting more and more prominent for where consumers go to find brands.
Got it. Yeah, being omnipresent in the
Omnichannel.
lives of the people. Omnichannel. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
omnichannel. Interesting. So if I was thinking, okay, so I'm all in, right? I've got funnels running now. I've built my model, whether that's ISA based or team based or whatever, operationally focused or people focused. I'm humming. I believe what you say, that we need to be omni-channel, that's the evolution. Where do I go if I'm in that position right now? How would you advise that I prepare for that world?
I would tell anybody who's getting ready to prepare for that world, who's in, who's got money to spend, leverage that they need, and is really starting to build that omni-channel approach out. The number one piece of advice I would give is own your stuff. Don't rent it. Right. And that's the next layer of approach I would do, is own your stuff, because technology nowadays is so advanced and it's so intelligent that things that otherwise aren't supposed to communicate with each other can. Right. At this
Okay.
point, there's not a lot of products and tools out there that can't communicate internally and externally by passing data between the two. Right. So what I would say the next most obvious step is, as you start figuring out, okay, I need a online lead gen campaign with Google, and I need a CRM that's going to work my drip campaign when the lead, shows up. How do I get that through a website? Right. And what's the CRM behind the website? And how do I stitch those two pieces together and build that optimal flow? And the number one piece of advice I would give is make sure that you own that process and you're not renting it from somebody, where if you decide to leave and go in a different direction, they take 2 out of 3 of those things. Right. Which would
Got
be
it.
your website and your CRM and your campaign and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the fast answer. I mean, if I could sit here and bring on 100 agents and go one by one and say, what's your certain situation, I can guide you through that. But the
Yeah.
number one filter of decision making from the jump is own your stuff. Whatever you
Own
put
your
in
stuff.
place, own it. It needs to be yours, and it needs to be something that can pivot with a new process or a new funnel you want to create in your business.
Okay, so let's be really clear on that, because I think that's a really interesting point, and I want to make sure that I understand, that we help our listeners understand. What do you mean when you say like own the CRM? Do I own it if I use Google, and I don't own it if I'm using an off-the-shelf CRM? What's the help me
Yeah.
make that more clear?
It would be, yeah. So it would be like, this is the process, right? If we're just going from top down, like, let's just really get into the nitty gritty and let's just use Google,
Yeah.
right? You're going to build a Google Ads campaign, and those leads are going to click on a link from the different keywords or phrases that you target. And those leads are, when they click on that link, they're going to go to a landing page. That landing page now transfers from a campaign to your website. So campaign's number one, right?
Hmm.
Campaign you're going to own because you're doing it through Google and you own that campaign, you own the leads, you own all that process, right? So that's an easy one. That lead is then going to go to a website. If it's a buyer lead, it's probably going to want to look at an IDX feed. So you need to have an IDX feed. If it's a seller lead, it's going to need to go to a home evaluation or a intake form, so to speak. Right.
Hmm.
So those are really, and that's, again, this is very high level, but that website and those tools that cage your leads, when I say own the process, I mean, like, for example, I would advise clients to go, if they can, go to like a custom WordPress website, right? Get a custom WordPress site and integrate in an IDX feed, because you can get your custom WordPress website for almost free if you build it yourself, or for a very inexpensive price if you get somebody else to build it, but you own that website. It's yours. You pay a lump sum, you own the site, right? That would be the first thing I mean when I say own your stuff. Second thing is, you got to integrate an IDX feed. Let's say that you're using any, big box CRM that's out there. Normally they come with an IDX feed. You can integrate that into your CRM, right? Into your
Okay.
website.
To your
And
website.
so that's kind of the website's that middle player that connects everything. That's the thing you want to own, number one, right? Because that's the
Okay.
connector from a campaign or any of those outward, orbiting planets I gave earlier that go
Hmm.
directly back to your website. So own that, right? And then when I say own your CRM, nobody's going to be able to just build a CRM from scratch and own it 100% on their own. But what I mean
Yeah.
by that, kind of, the best CRM is the one that you use. That's a saying that I heard once, and I thought it was really smart, was like, the best
Yeah.
CRM is the one that you use, right? So I would make sure that that CRM that you're using, you're planning on staying in and you understand at a high level, and stop jumping around back and forth to different CRMs. Because one of the things we do at our agency is we don't have our own tools. We just use what the client currently has. So we know pretty much every CRM in the real estate industry in a very intimate way. There's none that are better or worse than others, right? Like just use
Yeah.
the one that's available to you, use the one that makes sense, and own that middle connector, which is the website, and then really own that CRM. And that's more of a mentality shift of like, just use that tool at its highest possible output instead of jumping back and forth to different ones.
Two different ones. Got it. And let's go back to the beginning though, Riley, because I think you made a really interesting point. I hear a lot of realtors, even folks that I have the privilege of coaching, saying, "Well, I hired someone to do my ads,"
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that okay, well, that a question we can then ask is, well, did you own the process? Did you own? You said, well, Google Ad, you own that funnel. If you do it, if you outsource that, you don't own it.
I would argue that that's kind of one of the decision-making processes on which service provider slash vendor that you hire, because you should own it. You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah,
should be yours. You paid for it, right? It's your tools, it's your
yeah,
stuff. Hiring somebody who's a professional to help you and provide that service, I'm always a big believer in that, right? If there's I'd rather
yeah.
know my stuff really well. It goes back to the one thing, right? I know my thing really, really well. I don't know some of this other stuff really, really well, which is where I hire support and build relationships with people. So I think owning that is really, again, that's one of the beginning stages of deciding on what service providers and vendors you use. Is like, what do I get if we
What do
end
I
up
get?
for some reason,
Yeah,
right? Like, I want to keep these things that I'm spending my money on in this data, because that data is wildly valuable.
yeah. That's the key, right? Because if I stroke a check and what shows up in my inbox is leads, but I don't know where they came from, I've
Mhm.
just paid somebody to give me a job to convert those leads.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, you said that to me a while ago. I'm like, that's really
Which
smart.
we,
That makes sense.
that,
Yeah.
that's the only thing I've done. I've just written a check to someone else to give me a task because
Mhm.
I have no idea where that lead came from. I don't understand how they were generated. I don't understand the philosophy behind it. You don't need you hire the expert to do the job, but the process needs to be yours. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, I love that. I love that idea. Um, all right, so we're going to be omni-channel. Future of lead gen is omni-channel. It sounds more subtle than direct, right? Sounds also like we're blurring the lines between you know, content, entertainment, and advertising and marketing even more.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anything else you're seeing on the horizon that we should be aware of?
I would say, I mean, I think we're really hitting the most important things, right? I would
Yeah,
say we're really hitting the most important things. I mean, these channels that we use to advertise, they're not going to go away. It's the delivery method. And that's really what I was hitting on,
yeah,
is like the delivery method of us as users of those channels. That's the real difference maker. And it's the awareness of our consumers, right? Like, you can see from, I mean, not only is this something that I bet most people, if you put 100 people in a room, most people, majority would probably vote a yes to this, this statement. But most people are finding resources and information on the internet nowadays, right? That's really where they're going, right? Majority of people, at least. There's a stat that Google pulled actually in 2021. I need to get the updated data, but 2021 it pulled it and said that 51% of consumers go to Google and YouTube as their number one source of home research, right? So buying and selling,
yeah.
51% are going to those two channels to find
There's
information.
two.
So that's an overwhelmingly large amount of people, right? And
Yeah,
so they're going to those places to find information. And so now that they're aware they're being advertised to on those platforms and those places, like I was saying, I think that the evolution is going to be how we, as the users of those channels, deliver information to our potential consumers and clients. That's the real evolution that we're going to have to pay attention to.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Interesting.
one that you left out, Philip, too, was also owning it, right? Like going from kind of renting it, leasing it, like for talking about the future. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
omni-channel, a little bit more subtle, but then owning the process versus essentially only paying someone else for a service where we end up with a job,
Yeah.
yeah,
right? And so now owning it doesn't mean that you can't hire a consultant, right? Like Speculo to help you out with it, but it does mean it should be kind of more of yours versus somebody else's.
Yeah.
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it's just the it's the evolution of like I was saying earlier, I think the evolution of the tools and the technology is great, and that's important. But it really also needs to be the evolution of those using those tools and technology.
Of
So
the
if it's not
user.
going to be
Yeah.
you, if it's not going to be you as the agent going out and learning and taking a, I mean, I make a joke all the time. At this point, I could go get my master's degree. There should be a master's degree in running a Google ad campaign. I mean, there really should be. It's insane, right? So hiring an outside resource is extremely valuable. And in fact, you probably make more money by adding a service fee on top of a budget versus not and trying to do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the biggest, I would say 50% of the evolution is the tools and technology. But I also, outside of talking about the sexiness of AI and technology and all this stuff, I mean, the really important factor that is the truth is the other 50% of that evolution is going to have to be the person who's providing the services, which in my case is a vendor, right? I need to be
Yeah.
willing to put my feet to the fire with our clients, and I need to be willing to provide leverage and support to them past just saying, hey, here's a lead, right? And I think that evolution is going to be very prominent as we go forward into the future of what technology and lead generation is going to look like in the real estate industry.
Yeah. Okay, so now coach me through hiring a vendor. I think that's a great, I mean, that's really smart advice. And I still now I need to know how to hire somebody,
Yeah.
right? So what do I need to think about there?
Yeah, I would say there's three core things. First thing is going to be, is it your process or theirs? Are they showing up to the table and saying, hey, here's what you need to do. This is our box. This is our guidelines. These are our rails. Here's what we're going to give you. And this is what we're willing to do. Right. If that happens, obviously, if it's the right solution for you, that's great. Right. But I also think that it needs to be a lot of like, if you do the work of what we've all coached to and what the first, 50 minutes of this conversation has been, what do you need to do to set yourself up for success? And one of the core things is own your stuff. Right. So if you show up to a lead gen, vendor or provider, and they say, well, you got to leave that CRM to use this one. You need to do this so that we can do that. You might say yes to some of those things if it makes sense for you, but also protect that process that you've already owned and created. Because if you continue to jump back and forth, I think that's what I see as one of the other major issues is like, if you have to use somebody else's process every time you want to figure out if something works for you, you just kind of get turned in a blender half the time, and you come out of it and you're like, holy shit, what did I get for that? That doesn't, I'm lost. So
Yeah.
I think that's the other
Yeah.
thing is, are you using their process or yours? And if the answer is yours, that's a big green flag. If the answer is theirs, that's not necessarily a red flag, but it's cause for more questions to understand how that's going to be a long-term solution for you.
Be clear that it overlaps or it's the path you want to go down.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then
Okay,
the
so
second,
number one, process.
yeah,
Number
yeah,
two.
yeah. And the second thing would be, what do you get? Right? Like, what do you get if you decide to exit and go in a different direction? Right? What do you get to keep? What is yours? What do you own? I one of the things that I've heard from a mentor of mine that I absolutely love more than anything, and again, this goes back to being a service provider, is I might get a client and for 6 months I help them answer the first 5 out of their 10 questions, right? And then they might leave and go do something else or use a different provider, right? And they might say, well, this company sucked. They were the worst. Riley is the worst. I hate Riley. I'm going to use this other company. And then they go to the next company, and that company helps them solve questions 6 through 8 out of their 10 total questions. And then they go, well, Jason sucked. He didn't help me. He was the worst. I'm moving on to Philip. I heard Philip is the best. I heard Philip is the best. Philip gets to be our winner in this scenario. He shows up to Philip, and quickly Philip answers questions 9 and 10, and they go, oh my gosh, Philip is the best person on planet Earth. I love Philip. Right. But
Super
really what
genius.
happened is, yeah, exactly. But really what happened is Philip just got lucky because Jason and I already did the heavy lifting, and Philip gets to come in and save the day. And so that's a mistake I see a lot of people make, where they don't it's not necessarily about this person didn't do what they were supposed to do. It was that it just needed more time. It needed more process, and you needed to own
Yeah.
more from it. Right. And so really
Yeah.
that's where it becomes a huge piece of question number 2, which is, what do you get for what you're putting in? And how do you know that you're progressing? A lot of times what I see is, you don't really know what you're getting. You know that just phone numbers, names, and emails are showing up in your CRM, and you're supposed to go call them, but you don't understand the whole inner workings. You don't understand the process because it's in that box of somebody saying, well, you're just renting this. This is mine. I'm just letting you use
Fine.
it.
Yeah.
Well, if you
Yeah.
don't know that you're going to get that, if you don't know it's yours, then it does genuinely feel like you're just renting the space. Imagine it like renting an apartment versus buying a home. What do we say all the time as real estate agents? Well, you're not building equity. You're not growing anything. You're not growing your asset. Well, That's what you're doing when you don't have clarity on, do I own this process and what do I get when I leave? Because if you know what you get when you leave, you're going to stay a hell of a lot longer, right? Because you're going to want to
Yeah.
see that thing grow. If you don't know what you get when you leave, you make the huge mistake, which is bounce back and forth. When in reality, if you would have stuck it out with me, we would have succeeded big together after I answered all 10 of your questions. I just need time to do so. Right.
Yeah.
So that's thing number 2.
Yeah. And that's very different from the I'm going to run an ad and get a deal that closes on Tuesday. That's about as far away from
Yeah.
that as we can be.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Well,
So process.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
in the number 2, the biggest key to remember too is as real estate agents, we're using these tools so that we can better serve our clients. That's the whole point, right? So we can make
Yeah.
more money. And so that's the other thing, is that you're getting intertwined with these tools. Like if you're going to use a tool or a lead gen provider or anything like that to help you get closer to your clients and make more money, you're going to get very intimately intertwined with that person, right? In that product. So if you decide to blow that thing up and go in a different direction, now you're starting from ground zero. In fact, you probably are starting in the negative, right? So that's the other thing, is you got to make sure that you own your stuff and you know what you're getting, because you're really intertwining yourself with the process, because that's what we're doing here. We're growing real businesses, and the tools that we use are a big feature and a big part of our businesses. And so that's number 2. That's probably the other biggest piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And any other advice on
Yeah.
before
You
you
know, I
enter
love,
a vendor partnership? Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was going to say, I love 3. I have to get my third in. Everything has
Get
to
the
fit.
third one. Yeah. Yeah.
So the third one is the flexibility, right? The are they malleable or not? So that's the other thing, is like we are growing. If we look at the history of the industry and we also look at the history of technology in the last 3 to 5 years, the amount of change and growth and advancement is exponential compared to the last 15, right? And so when we look at how fast technology is evolving and how many new products are popping up in the industry and how many new things are changing in the industry, the other thing is the partner, when you're choosing a partner, make sure you also have a keen understanding of how malleable, how flexible is that partner with the industry that you are currently in and the tools that you're using them and the goals that you have to achieve, right? So again, it's that flexibility of your partner to grow and change with you in the industry when you need to.
When you need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really key, especially now where there's a lot of discussion about compensation and all of the the energy that's going into those conversations. We don't know we don't know exactly what the real estate industry is going to look like. We don't know what technology is going to be prominent. We do know what's been consistent, which is that the end consumer, the home buyer and the home seller, generally seem to want a trusted advisor by their side through this process. That's been the same for 100 years. Let's focus on what's staying the same and have systems and processes that can adapt
Adapt around it. Yeah.
around that
Yeah.
core fundamental fact. Yeah,
Adapt around it 100%.
good stuff. Jason, what didn't we talk about that we should have?
We talked about everything. I have literally a page of notes for piecing this out and chunking it out for people that we will drop in the description, so you can jump around to different pieces of the interview depending on what it is you're looking for.
Perfect. There will be timestamps in there. There will be contact information. If people want to get in touch with you, though, Riley, how do we do that? How do we, if someone wants to reach out to you or have other questions, what's the
Yeah.
best way to get in touch?
If you go to our website is just thespeculogroup.com. If you go to the website, there's a lot of videos and content and answers and context, stuff like that. And, pretty much every button is a link to either my phone number or a scheduling link with me. And then I can give you guys to throw in the chat my phone number and my email for people to connect to. The email is just riley@thespeculogroup.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So understand your process. This is a game. It requires some patience, requires a budget. Build your brand first, grow from there. Any other parting thoughts for us, Riley, before we let you go?
No, I think just make sure that whatever you're building, you understand that it's not all just about the technology. That's I guess the last thing I would say is that is one of the other major mistakes is, you use the word AI if you're talking to a group of people and everybody starts like, oh my gosh, what's that? This crazy thing, right? The technology is great, but make sure that you're also focusing on building a real business around the technology, because it's only as good as its user. That's my parting words, is that the technology, the tools, the products, the systems, they're only as good as their user.
I love that.
No,
Yeah. The right tool in the wrong hands does no good. The wrong tool in the right hands does no good. Got to get them both.
gotta get them both. Absolutely.
Love it. Uh, Riley, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been fun. I appreciated this.
This has been fun. So remember to like this, subscribe, comments below if you got any questions. Reach out to Jason or I if there's something that you would like to see or someone you'd like to hear from. But in the meantime, I'm just going to say, Riley, thank you for your joining us today. And if you're out there watching in TV land, be safe, be well, and we'll talk soon. See you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.